Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Gossip Finance, where I am your host, Alasius Inger.
And I'm Duncan Sandlin. How's everybody today? How are you, Lacey?
I'm excellent, and thanks for asking.
Good.
Sounds like there's been some interesting things happening in the news this week.
Yeah, busy news week. So we did talk last time about Trump, and he got the conviction in the civil trial for the sexual abuse and defamation. Well, and don't ask me why. CNN, I know why, we'll talk about it, but CNN decided to give him his own hour-long town hall right after that.
Oh, boy.
And
all right,
it did not go well, and CNN is a little bit under the gun for doing this, because it was kind of embarrassing. So we'll look at a little bit about this real quick. So this is an Inside Edition, kind of ripping on CNN.
I'm sorry, look at that picture of him with his mouth open like he's just roar.
Oh,
a lot of headlines today about that jaw-dropping CNN town hall with Donald Trump. It appeared that the audience was filled with his supporters. They cheered his defense of the January 6th rioters and laughed as he mocked E. Jean Carroll, the woman who successfully sued him for sexual assault and defamation. His comments were so offensive to Ms. Carroll that she says she is seriously considering filing a new lawsuit against the former president. Here's Stephen.
I don't blame her.
You go, girl.
Well, he just got tagged for defamation. Then he went on CNN, defamed her again, after he just lost $5 million for defamation and sexual abuse.
Just doesn't learn. And listen, I'm not even saying it because it's Trump, and let's be honest, I don't like him. But for anyone, you literally just got yourself handed to yourself to learn the lesson, and you can't figure it out 10 minutes later?
Right. No, he never learns. But here's the thing with CNN. It's like, they should know better than to have him on for an hour, because he basically got up there and just lied. He was still pushing the I won the 2020 election. He's pushed that. He said he finished building the wall, which never happened. You can't fact check somebody like that in real time when they can just spew bullshit. It's too hard. And they should have known better. And the other thing that kills me is, and then she pointed that out, which I think was the big embarrassment, which is, so you do a town hall, but you fill it with Trump supporters. So they're cheering and clapping him on the whole time. So basically, it's not a town hall, it's a rally.
Right.
If it was
very different.
If it was a town hall, you'd have some liberals and some Democrats in there to ask him questions.
You kind of have some of everybody there.
Right. But nope, it was all pretty much Trump supporters.
You know, he reminds me of that kid I keep giving detention to, that I give detention to, and the next day I give them detention for literally the same thing I gave them detention for the day before. And all week long, I give them detention. And they're like, but why, miss? And it's because of the thing they did yesterday, the day before, and the day before that.
Right.
But I feel like Trump is old enough, like these are kids we're talking about, but Trump is old enough to where he should sort of have figured some of this out by now.
You would think so. You'd hope so. Let's watch some more, because he does. They show some clips, but this is him talking about E. Jean Carroll. Once again, he just got tagged for $5 million for defamation and sexual assault or sexual abuse of her, and now he's talking about her at this town hall.
Fabian.
A triumph for Trump and a train wreck for CNN. That's what they're calling the Trump town hall today.
It was disgraceful on every level.
America got to see who he is last night, a ranting, raving lunatic.
Trump mocked writer E. Jean Carroll, who just this week won a $5 million judgment against him for defamation and sexual assault.
I have no idea who the hell. She's a whack job.
You did not.
The mostly Republican audience lapped it up.
What kind of a woman meets somebody and brings them up, and within minutes you're playing hanky-panky in a dressing room, okay? I don't know if she was married then or not, but think of it.
He made fun of her account of her sexual assault, and many in the audience laughed.
E. Jean Carroll is reacting today, calling Trump's mockery stupid, disgusting, vile, foul. Her lawyer says they're considering suing Trump for defamation again.
And they got it on tape.
I mean, you know what? I think it is a good spend of some of that money she just got from him on the judgment to try to go in and be like, okay, so clearly you didn't learn the first time.
Right.
I'm not all about people going sue happy, but like, just to prove the point, this one feels kind of worth it to me.
Well,
and again, this isn't even about it being him. It's just about like, you literally just got yourself handed to yourself 10 minutes ago for this.
Well, plus, you know, too, with a guy with that many and crazy followers, they're sending her death threats and shit like that. So yeah, I think she's got a good case to make. Plus, we got him on tape saying it. The thing, like I said, was so disgusting is why did they pack it with Trump supporters? Because they're laughing about, he's talking about the sexual assault and they're laughing about it. I mean, it's just like, it was amazing to me.
What it is. Market it is what it really is instead of sort of false advertising.
Well, you know, here's the thing. Okay, this is the thing that pisses me off about it is if you're going to get a guy like that on, right, you need to get somebody who, A, can keep him in line, and B, can challenge him back. Because as much as this woman tried, he just talked over her and just kept bullshitting. And what you need to do is you can't put him in a scenario where he has the audience on his side. Because then, to the casual observer, it looks like he's winning. Right? To the person who doesn't know any better, it looks like, oh, see, Trump's got this, oh, he's right. Oh, the reporter is being a nasty, mean person to him. Right? Just what he called her. Right? That's what it seems like. That's what they don't understand is it's the forum that you put it in. You made him look good. And you made yourselves look like assholes. And you're CNN, you should freaking know better, you would think. Right? Plus, the other thing that kills me is you got to remember, if you go internationally, who's the news channel that everybody watches for American news? CNN. And they turn it on, and what do they see? They see him lying about elections, saying all this fascist crap, right? And they see the audience cheering him on, and that's what they think is happening in the United States. They think it's like a little Hitler Youth rally going on over here.
Well, and honestly, by the looks of that thing, it kind of was.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Well, here's Anderson Cooper. He tried to defend their position on doing this, but it's look, I mean, I don't have a problem with Anderson Cooper, but this is kind of bullshit, and it's kind of hypocritical. You know.
Maybe you haven't been paying attention to him since he left office. Maybe you've been enjoying not hearing from him, thinking it can't happen again. Some investigation is going to stop him. Well, it hasn't so far. So if last night showed anything, it showed it can happen again. It is happening again. He hasn't changed, and he is running hard. You have every right to be outraged today and angry and never watch this network again. But do you think staying in your silo and only listening to people you agree with is going to make that person go away?
Well, honestly, Anderson, here's the problem. We're not saying you can't report on him. We're not saying you shouldn't report on him. What we're saying is you shouldn't give him an hour unchecked where the crowd is on his side and format it in a way that he looks like he came out on top. You should know better.
He probably was required to say that.
No, I'm sure they pushed him to say it. But here's the thing about it. Because it's the problem with the press is you just can't, sometimes you just got to call the guy a liar. And a lot of the mainstream press, they won't do it. Even if they're like, remember Paul Ryan telling us that whole thing about, well, if we cut taxes on the rich, it'll raise revenue. And when we all knew that was horseshit. Every economist was saying it was horseshit. But nobody said, hey, he's a liar. I remember even when Joe Biden debated him, the vice presidential debate. And it was Paul Ryan and Joe Biden. And it was pretty obvious that they basically said to Joe, you know, go kick his ass, but you can't call him a liar to his face. Because Joe kept having to stop himself from going, this is a lie, that's a lie. That's when he came up with its malarkey shit. And that's where he got that tagline, is because he was trying to find a way to not call him a liar when all he wanted to do was call him a little fucking liar. Right?
I mean,
but that's
you know
works.
what? I don't know why they wouldn't let it just call it what it is, man. All of America the half of America that could tell it was a lie was saying the word liar. So I don't know why Joe Biden isn't allowed to say it.
Well, you know, it's one of those things where, I mean, he did imply that the debates with Trump, that Trump was a liar. You know, and I think the big win for Biden on that debate wasn't anything he said politically or policy-wise. It was when he just looked over at Trump and he said, will you shut up? And everybody was like, oh.
Right, like...
Because Trump didn't know how to respond to that. Nobody talks to him like that. And Biden's sitting there like, I will kick your ass. You little crybaby. But here's the deal where it's so hypocritical for CNN. Because CNN needed the ratings boost, and that's what this was about. And they got it. Here it is. Axios is reporting. CNN's controversial town hall with former President Trump drew 3.3 million viewers Wednesday night, making CNN the most watched cable news network of the evening. Right? And they talk about this. Yeah, Caitlin Collins did her best, but there was a lot of shit she couldn't cover. Trump pushing the unproven conspiracy about the 2020 election being rigged, misleading comments about finishing the construction of the U.S.-Mexico border wall, right? But at the end of the day, what ended up happening was CNN got the views and they made news, which is stupid because you're supposed to report the news, CNN. You're not supposed to be making news. Because now we're talking about it, right? Yeah, because now we're talking about CNN, right? The rest of the world's talking about why the hell they do that. And you can't give me the excuse, well, he is like the whole Anderson Cooper thing. Anderson Cooper is like, well, he is the front runner for the Republican Party right now. And it's like, well, yeah, I remember in 2016 when Ben Carson was the front runner. You didn't give him an hour on TV with his own audience.
This is also true.
Why? Because it wasn't going to draw 3.3 million viewers with Ben Carson.
All right, I need to pause.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about with this was, so Trump promised to pardon a large portion of his supporters who rioted at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, if, of course, he wins, right? But this is the big one. He inserted himself into negotiations over the debt ceiling and refused to answer if he'd sign a national abortion ban. The national abortion ban, I mean, I don't think he cares either way. I think it's going to be whatever is politically expedient. But he basically said, nope, let's just default on the debt ceiling. Don't give anything, right? So it's kind of become, we've talked about the debt ceiling before. We're going to get into it now again. And then we're going to go through Paul Krugman talking about it. But the whole thing with the debt ceiling is, it's an artificial problem, right? This money's been already approved. It's already been spent. All we're doing is raising the amount of debt so we can cover what we've already paid, right? Or what we've already owed, right? When Trump was president, they passed it every time. No question, right? But whenever you have a Democratic president, the Republicans have the House, they always play this game of chicken. And they've been doing this for the last, 10, 12 years for sure. They've done it a couple times before that. But it was back then, it was the Tea Party, and they were like, they would try to play these games with it, right? They tried to cut Social Security by threatening the debt ceiling before, and they almost got it. Except for Mitch McConnell didn't want to take that deal because he didn't want to be seen as siding with Obama on anything. Right? And now they're doing the same thing again. We covered it. They want to cut food assistance for the poor and for, pregnant women and shit like that, right? But now it's different because before they were crazy. Now it's the absolute crazies. It's the Marjorie Taylor Greene party, right? The Lauren Boebert party. And Kevin McCarthy's kind of beholden to these people and to Trump and Trump supporters because that's his base. So now what do they do? If Trump is saying let it ride, now they're in kind of a tough position. But we're going to let Paul Krugman talk about this real quick. And then we'll go on a bit. Here is Yahoo Finance. And they got Paul Krugman on to talk about this.
About the economic impact of this debt ceiling fight with Paul Krugman. He's a New York Times opinion columnist who has also won the Nobel Prize in economics. Paul, it's great to see you again. So we know that this is obviously an extremely serious situation. We talk about some of the warnings that we've gotten out over the last couple of days. Jamie Dimon saying that we're going to see panic as we get closer to that. Ex-State Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen saying global economic downturn will likely ensue. How serious is this situation that we're in right now?
Well, we don't really know. We have never really gone through this before, but there are reasons, there are pretty good reasons to panic if we actually do have a technical default, because U.S. government debt is the foundation on which world financial markets rest. Basically, T-bills are the collateral of choice. They are the ultimate safe asset, and if it suddenly turns out that the U.S. government doesn't necessarily honor its promises to pay T-bills, then who knows? But it could be a cascading series of financial dislocations.
Okay, so just to clarify, for all you at home who don't know much about this, so the way it works is we pass a budget, right, in Congress, and that's the money we're going to spend, and then money gets spent, and sometimes we spend more than we plan to, or things happen, whatever. And what happens is we get to what's called a debt ceiling, which is like, okay, we need to issue more debt to cover our costs, right? And so that's what the government does. Now he's talking about T-bills, which are very short-term government debt obligations and whatnot. But he's right. That's how everything's traded. So if you own money market funds or anything like that, if you've heard of that or seen it, that's what they are for the most part, is T-bills. They're a little short-term. They're usually like 30 days. Right? But they're instantly tradable. They're liquid as cash. You can use them as cash anywhere in the world. Right? Any bank will take them as cash. So it's one of those deals where our government's the only government that always pays its debt, that has a secure ability to pay its debt, right? So everybody in the world uses U.S. treasuries, U.S. currencies to cover their deal. That's why so many countries, like when they talk about have U.S. debt, that's why, right? China's been trying to cut down on it, but China has whatever 800, whatever it is, billion or something like that in U.S. debt. But the reason is because the yuan, their currency, sucks. It could go up or down quite a bit because China's not a very stable government, right? So what do? They take the yuan and they buy T-bills, which are stable, right? So like when we sanctioned Russia, even before this war, right, with Ukraine, what did all the Russian billionaires do? They went out and they traded all the rubles they could for T-bills. Why? Because they knew the ruble was going to collapse. And it did. Right? So, that's the whole thing. So the world economy kind of rests on this. So if all of a sudden the U.S. currency isn't stable, T-bills aren't stable anymore, then you're talking about global catastrophe. You're talking about international recessions. Right? On top of the fact that we already talked about the Fed is worried about inflation and they're pushing a recession. So now you've got Congress pushing to potentially go to an international recession. And who do we have running at the helm? Kevin McCarthy and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh, good.
Yep. It's basically like riding a psychotic horse into a burning stable at this point. So Paul Krugman's sitting there being calm, going, I don't really know what's going to happen.
Man.
Yeah, the lunatics are running the asylum.
Kind of makes me wish I had put something.
Some vodka in there or something.
Juice in this thing, man. I wish I could tell you this was a real cocktail because that kind of makes me nervous.
Yep. Let's watch a little bit more of this because he's he's doing a good assessment, but he's also, I think, trying to hold back a little bit because he doesn't want to make people paranoid, right? But he's also sitting there thinking, kind of hard to know what the crazies are going to do at this point, you know?
Well, and Paul, some would argue that the reputation has already been damaged, regardless of whether we go past that X date or not. I want to get to your framing of all this, because we're talking about the debt ceiling, potential compromises that could be reached, but you've said that get rid of the debt ceiling altogether. Why?
Yeah, the debt ceiling is fundamentally crazy, right? You have Congress votes. It votes on spending bills. It votes on tax bills. The end result of those bills is whatever happens to the budget deficit, and the U.S. government, if it's a deficit, has to borrow. And then Congress votes again on whether to allow the borrowing that is required by its own legislation. So you're basically getting, I think that someone's analogy was that it's like ordering a meal at a restaurant. You order everything, it's prepared, it's all about to be delivered to your table. Then you say, no, I'm not going to pay the credit card bill, and I'm walking out of the restaurant. That's not, that's an insane second step. None of this is about fundamental decisions about spending or taxing or the budget deficit. This is all about whether, for political reasons, the party that controls one house of Congress can force the U.S. to renege on promises it's already made.
So that's it. You nailed it. I mean, it's kind of hard to go any further than that, but that's what's going on. And it's always the Republicans that do this shit. That's a great example. He's always like, they've already agreed to do this. They've already passed the bill to pay for all this. All this money has been approved. They approved it. And he's like, they're right. Now that the food's arrived at the table, they're saying, we don't want to pay the check. Unless we cut food stamps for the poor or something. Right?
Yeah, his analogy was really made it pretty clear.
Well, yeah, it's even worse. This is like you have the poor person at the table who just has the small salad and a glass of water, and you're sitting there saying, "No, I want them to get rid of their salad because I'm not paying for that." Right? Even though we all agreed. No, I still want my two steaks. I'm still getting my two steaks, right? But
their side salad's gotta go.
Fuck them. They can fill up on bread. Right? Oh man. It's like, what was I never really watched that show, but I did watch one episode of Friends where they go to dinner, and of course, three of them are a lot wealthier, make more money than the other three. And there's a point where they get to the check, and they're like, "Oh, let's split the check evenly." And of course, the three that don't make as much money, you're all looking at each other, shaking their heads and sighing. And they're like, what? They're like, you guys pick a restaurant you know we can't afford. Then we come here. We don't, we order salads because that's all we can afford, right? And then you guys want to split the check evenly after you just spent $100 on a fucking, meal. And I spent $15 on a salad. It's like, no, that's not reasonable.
Like, I'm not doing that.
Yep. It's like that friend you go out with and they want to split the bill, and it's like, dude, you had 4 glasses of wine. It's like $80.
I literally never try to split the bill 50-50 unless we literally basically ordered the same dollar amount.
Yeah.
Because I have been the person in the past that was really calculating how much I was spending, so I don't want to put other people in that position.
No. I mean, it depends on how long you've known your friend and if everybody's cool with it. But it's like, yeah. But if we're talking, once again, my point was, in the analogy, we're talking about who's getting cut here. Poor people. Right. That's who's getting. They want to cut. They don't want to cut the rich. They want to cut poor people, and they're going to hold everybody else hostage at the table. Right? Until they get that. And that's what they're trying to do.
All right. If that were to be fact, or if we were to see that happen, then how should Congress then, I guess, handle the government's borrowing limit, or really the government's borrowing then going forward if there's nothing keeping it in check?
Well, but there is. I mean, the government can't spend anything that hasn't been voted by Congress. Joe Biden can't go out and say, okay, I'm going to offer Medicare for all because I feel like it. It would have to pass that through Congress, which is not going to happen, by the way. It's a Republican president could not just say, okay, I'm eliminating the income tax because I feel like it. Congress would have to vote to do that. So removing the debt ceiling, I mean, nobody else has anything like this. This is a crazy kind of double jeopardy on government operations that makes no sense at all. The power of the purse rests with Congress, and it does not come from the debt ceiling. It comes from the fact that spending and taxing must be authorized by legislation.
I think he just nailed it. There really is no reason to have this and have to go through this stupid game every couple of years or every year and a half, whatever it is. He's right. You already approved it. Why are we going through this again? Right? All it does is it creates a leverage tool for one side, for the minority to blackmail the majority. That's all it does. And then that's not very democratic.
Right, they just go around and around and around with it.
Yeah, and it's bullshit. And what does it do? Every time it jeopardizes the reputation of the U.S. currency and the U.S. government. For what? Right? So we can cut fucking food stamps? Because that's really the big issue here. That's what they want to cut. So anyway, I say I'm with Paul Kruger. I think we get rid of the debt ceiling. It's a stupid thing. Plus, then idiots on stupid town halls on CNN can't go, let's just let the U.S. default on its debt, because what's the worst that could happen? I don't know, global financial crisis. We're gonna go do one more story here. This one's kind of a sad one, but I think we should talk about it. And just so you guys know, trigger warning: this involves the death of a young man, so it's not a pleasant story. But as some of you may have heard, in New York, there's this guy, Jordan Neely. So Jordan Neely, he was a black kid. He was living with his mom. I think he had some mental health issues, and then he was mostly known for he was a street performer, and he used to do a Michael Jackson impersonation in Times Square, and that's how he made money. And then I guess his mother died, and then he became homeless, and his mental health deteriorated quite a bit. So he gets on a subway train, and he's upset, and he's really unruly, and basically he's yelling about how he's starving, he hasn't eaten in days and days, and he just wants to get arrested. And he doesn't care if he gets arrested, right? But he's being unruly and yelling and da-da-da. Well, this guy, Daniel Penny, and a couple of people, but mostly Daniel Penny, step in. Daniel Penny's an ex-Marine. Daniel Penny starts choking him. Gets him in a chokehold. Holds him like that for like 10 or 15 minutes, something. It's a long time. And Jordan Neely was the young man having the mental breakdown, basically gets strangled to death on the subway train. And now the guy, Daniel Penny, is being charged with manslaughter. So I'm going to show you this clip. Trigger warning for everybody. This is the actual violent scene on tape.
So if you are not comfortable seeing that, you may want to
skip.
Not watch for the next, skip forward.
Yeah, skip forward for the next, yeah. Or just skip this story entirely and skip forward a couple minutes, yeah. But we're going to watch this tape. So here's the guy got on his phone.
Daniel Penny, the man who put Jordan Neely in a deadly chokehold on a New York City subway, arrived with his attorney at a Manhattan police precinct to turn himself in on Friday. He's expected in court later today.
He did so voluntarily and with the sort of dignity and integrity that is characteristic of his history of service to this grateful nation.
The 24-year-old Marine charged with manslaughter in the second degree with a maximum penalty of 15 years.
Wow. So yeah, 15 years is what they're looking at. I think that video is a little hinky. So here's where we wanted to talk about this a little bit, or at least I did. We have a serious issue with homelessness and people with mental health in this country. And there are solutions to this. One of the big ones is basically giving them housing. It's called Housing First. It's a program that's been around a long time. The understanding, though, that I think that where this gets misled a lot is vast majority of homeless people, like 98%, 99%, they're only homeless for like a year or two or a few years. They're mostly people that had medical problems or they got laid off their jobs or something happened. They had to take care of a family member, blah, 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 right? And they're just trying to get back to working on their feet. And one of the solutions to that is providing them with housing, even if it's simple, cheap, like a small apartment, right? Because it's really hard to get a job if you don't have an address or a phone number, if you don't have somewhere safe to go at night, if you don't have a place to clean your clothes or shower, right? So different cities have done this. I know Denver had a lot of success with this, where they did this and they reduced their homeless problem significantly within a couple of years. The second type of sort of homeless person is the one you see most of all, is guys like Jordan Neely. They have mental problems, and they're what we call a chronically homeless person. That's a person that needs serious government help if they're going to stay off the street. They're not going to be able to do it on their own, probably at any point, because they either have severe mental health problems or severe drug addiction problems. And that's something that, we never really addressed mental health. I know John F. Kennedy tried to, but then never followed through. So that's the other issue. And I would say had we done something about this financially as a country, we probably wouldn't be having a lot of these problems. And this kid would probably still be alive because he'd be in a facility somewhere getting fed instead of trying to get arrested on a subway car so he could get food. Because if he goes to jail, they'll feed him. Right? Because that was the big issue.
You go to jail, you get fed, and you get an indoor place to sleep.
That's safe. That's fairly safe, yeah. And that's just, and you're going to get fed 3 times a day. If you're out on the street, you could die at any minute, right? You get sick or something, which is highly likely, right? There's no one to help you. So kind of what was going on here. Now, that's my main argument, is just we need to do more about this. And the reality is for somebody like Jordan Neely, I read an article a long time ago when I was doing research on this when I was a police officer. And it was actually the deputy mayor of Denver who sent it to me, because he did a lot of work with the homeless. And it was called like $1 Million Mike or something like that, or Marv or what. And it was about a guy who lived in Las Vegas. And what the police there did was they did a study on this guy over a period of a year. And that's what they figured it cost to deal with this homeless guy, right? From EMTs having to pick him up to police having to arrest him. So every time there was a 911 call on this guy, they recorded it and they factored, okay, this is what it cost. So they figured it cost $1 million to deal with this guy over the year, as opposed to we could have put him in a mental health facility and it would have cost us about $70,000 or $80,000. So it's kind of like, when you think about it, it's kind of a no-brainer. We could get him off the street, make sure he's fed and getting treatment, right? And he's with health officials, and it would save the police all this stress and the EMTs all this stress, and it'd save the city $1 million. But instead, we'd rather do nothing because it's going to cost money to put that program in place, and nobody wants to do it because everybody's upset about the upfront sticker shock. And it's like, yeah, but over the long run, it's way cheaper, right? So
not to mention
neighborhoods are significantly nicer because they're, safer spaces. There are less people that are obviously having issues, wandering around, making people feel afraid. The neighborhoods become a much nicer place to be in.
Sure.
Which is good for people's businesses, right? It's good for people who want to be out and about. People want to complain about the streets feeling unsafe and neighborhoods going downhill. People want to make these complaints, but they don't actually want to stop and think about
they don't want to pay for
what
it.
really needs to be addressed in order to make it this nice neighborhood you want to be in.
Well, here's the thing, too, is with a lot of these people that are homeless or they're living on the street and stuff, almost very few of them are necessarily violent. I mean, some are, but we always hear about those. But as a whole, most of them aren't. Like this kid Neely wasn't threatening anybody necessarily that I know of. He didn't attack anybody, right? He was just screaming he wanted to get arrested, right? Now, there was a big pushback about, okay, well, especially from the conservatives, about, well, Daniel Penny's acting in self-defense and da-da-da-da-da, and he's protected the people on the train, and what good is that going to do if we start arresting everybody, da-da-da. Here's the thing. I'm going to talk about this from my perspective as a former police officer, okay? Just simple stuff, because I've had this conversation a bunch of times. In the police academy and when you're on patrol, we had this thing. I don't know what they do in New York. I have some idea what they do in New York. I know what I was trained to do. We had this thing called escalation of force. Okay. Now, as a police officer, I can go one level above the suspect, right? So if I want to detain somebody and they're just resisting, but they're not threatening me or trying to hit me or anything, I can physically move them by force. I can put them in handcuffs. You can pepper spray. You usually don't want to, because pepper spray could get into your face, especially if you're outside and it's windy. Plus, it looks bad in court when you're just spraying somebody who's just sitting there, right? Or just standing there and doesn't want to comply. But you can force them if you have to. Now, if I'm dealing with somebody and the guy all of a sudden raises his fists and starts coming at me, I can now move to the next level, so I can pull out my baton and defend myself, right? If the guy comes at me with a weapon, like a knife or something, then I can pull out a gun. But I can't, there's a level where I can escalate. That's pretty clear cut, right? I'm not saying Daniel Penny had any of that training. He was a Marine. He had a very different set of training. I wasn't trained for warfare. I was trained to police. Now, I do know this, though, in New York, like a lot of states, they have, the castle doctrine, and you're obligated to retreat in most cases. Right. So in that situation, if somebody's threatening you, you should be trying to retreat if you can. If you can't, then you can, then it's easier to say, I have to defend myself. At no point here was there any violence or assault coming from Jordan Neely that was reported or on tape. It was basically just the guy got behind him and choked him out. Right. So now what you've done is you escalated to a chokehold, which is potentially lethal force for 10 minutes. Okay. So this is where it's going to be difficult for him in court to explain this, because typically, like for a police officer, I don't know what a Marine's trained to do, but we were trained to do what's called a vascular neck restraint. And the whole point of it is you don't ever squeeze the throat. You're squeezing the side of the neck with your arm to try and slow blood flow to the brain so they go to sleep. They pass out. And then you want to get them handcuffed as quickly as possible, because they usually wake up within about 20 seconds. But that whole maneuver takes less than 10 seconds if you do it right. You don't do it for 10 minutes. At 10 minutes, now you're potentially harming the person, right? Especially if you're squeezing the windpipe, right? The other thing that's a problem here is you got to factor this. in a case where you're choking somebody, even if you're trying to kill him, let's say he was intended to kill him, right? I don't think he did, but let's say it was. It takes at least 2 minutes to strangle a person to death. Think about how long you can hold your breath. It takes at least 2 minutes. So that's a long, oh, bless you. That's a long time that he's sitting there and he could have stopped at any time.
That was a long time. 10 minutes is a long time.
Yeah, it's the same thing with George Floyd, where the guy was kneeling on his neck, and it was over 8 minutes. And I can tell you right now, in the police academy, you can kneel on the suspect's back. But if you kneel on their neck, that's an automatic fail. When I was in the police academy. If you do the choke hold, the VNR hold, you can do it, but you can't do it for more than a few seconds. Otherwise, it's an automatic fail, because you're just strangling the person.
Right.
Right? So, it's going to be tough for him in court. I think he'll probably plead it down. He'll probably get 4 or 5 years or something like that. But still, it's hard to say that what he did wasn't excessive, especially given that. Yeah, I was going to say, I think considering that he's going to have to be hard pressed to show that Jordan Neely was violent to the point where he needed to execute that kind of maneuver. Right.
Right. I mean, even though obviously military training is a bit different because the goal is different than what you received, when you were becoming a police officer, I still think he's going to be hard pressed to be able to make any kind of case for why the force he used jumped so far up
to that level
from what was happening.
Sure.
I mean, listen, I ride the subway, I ride public transit all the time, and when somebody gets on and they start, yelling and screaming about something, even if they're not coming at you, it can be, kind of an alarming sort of scary thing where you're like, oh, is this person...
Are they going to do something? Or, yeah.
And where you're really not sure. So to a degree, I can kind of see where this highly trained person was like suddenly on alert. But he's going to have an awful time trying to explain why we went from I'm really, really on alert to that sort of force. Like it's just jumping up too high, as you explained,
Right. I mean, I think it would have probably even been excessive if he punched the guy in the face. But if he punched the guy in the face and knocked him out, then he'd be looking at like a minor assault charge. And even then, the kid would be alive and they could probably plead it down. And it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. But we went straight to strangle him to death. I mean, that's a little bit 0 to 100. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
That's going to be a tough one to explain. But it also, like I said, it depends where you are. In New York, it's probably going to be harder for him. It's too bad he wasn't in Wisconsin like Kyle Rittenhouse, where that judge just kind of let the whole thing slide, man. So, all right. Well, that's enough for the news. Let's go to something a little bit lighter. So, we have an ongoing thing called Worthington's Law. Do you want to tell everybody what Worthington's Law is, Lacey?
Well, I guess I'll give the shortest version of it ever. It's really the idea that people that have money are somehow morally superior to people who do not have money.
Right.
You're smarter, morally superior, more talented, etc. And so therefore the opposite is if you don't have money, it must also be because you are lacking in all of those things.
Exactly.
That's my super short version of it.
Yep. It's the more money you have, the better person you are, and thus beyond criticism.
Intellectually superior, morally superior, etc., etc.
So we like to make fun of guys, especially like Dave Ramsey's one of our favorites. But I got a new guy. We're going to have some fun with him going forward. And I got this from the Young Turks. And I love him because he just says it out loud. No shame whatsoever. This is Grant Cardone being covered by the Young Turks. You're gonna love it.
If I made $400 grand a year, I would be embarrassed with myself as a husband, a father, basically as a human being. Big boy right over here popping out. What'd you make last year? What'd you gross last year? 2.7. How does anybody live on $2.7 million a year? You need to make it impossible, dude. I can't, my plane eats $2.7 million a year.
That's Grant Cardone. He's a finance influencer, and he is insufferable, to say the least. Apparently, making $400,000 a year would embarrass him. He wouldn't feel adequate as a father, husband. He'd be embarrassed. Let's take a look at some of his other videos in just a moment and see whether or not this guy knows what he's talking about.
So...
Okay, I just have to say, I would literally never give that guy a date. Ever. Ever. I would be so embarrassed to be in public with that guy. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Can't even tuck in his shirt.
He'd be embarrassed if he only made $400,000, but at any dollar amount, I would be totally embarrassed to be somewhere in public with him.
Well, it takes $400,000 worth of Viagra just to make him feel like a man, apparently. Talk about Tiny D energy coming out there.
Well, I feel like a broken record on here because I feel like I'm always talking about how completely out of touch some people are, like how just ignorant to other people's life experiences some people can be. And I think this guy completely surpasses Ramsey. Like, I'm always saying this about Ramsey and his people,
right? But
this guy takes the cake.
Well, the thing about Ramsey too is Ramsey he's not going to say it that out loud. He does say it. He just does it in a very subtle sort of way, right? Where he says, yeah, you're kind of a loser if you have debt, or you're a loser if you have these kinds of things, right? But he doesn't flat out get up there and go, you're just a worthless piece of shit. Unless you're, in the top 1%, right? But that's how it goes. But anyway, Anna's trying not to laugh because this guy's, like you said, he's just a clown. He's hilarious. But she's gonna check some more out. So let's see if he knows what he's talking about. Because his whole thing is you can become rich by flipping real estate. That's his whole spiel. Once again, guy who's never held a personal finance license that I could find. He's just worked in sales and real estate kind of stuff. But he owns a bunch of businesses. I think he's worth like $4 billion or something, or he claims to be. But we'll watch this.
Oh, spoiler alert, he doesn't. Before we do, though, Cenk, do you feel inspired?
Yeah, look, I don't know what it is about the right wing that enjoys guys like this. Because no one on the left wing likes guys like this. But right wing likes being yelled at and saying and being dominated in some weird way. Like, hey, you're not good enough. You're not man enough because you don't make $400,000. Hey, guys, think about it this way. I've made as little as...
Well, we'll skip some of this, but yep, he called it there. Yep.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Why is that the right wing likes being, yelled at and borderline abused?
I don't know. They love being talked down to. The thing about it, too, is he kind of nailed it. I mean, as you pointed out, where it's like people that like us are more on the left, we're just embarrassed for the guy. But people on the right think he's like the shit. And we're just sitting there going, oh my God, I wouldn't want to be caught dead in a room with this guy.
Right.
He nailed it. He's like, it's weird. It's a weird phenomenon. There's just something about 25% of people where they have this sort of, I know they've done studies where they have a higher sense of fight or flight. And these people tend to they like fascism. They want to be told by the great leader and be in deference to the great leader. And the leader is always right. I sort of get it. It's like, wouldn't it be nice if Tom Hanks said, "Don't worry, everybody, I'll handle world peace and everybody will prosper"? I'd be like, okay, well, all hail Tom Hanks, I guess. I mean, I get the temptation, but it's like they go like searching for it, and they always find these con men who just take them for everything they're worth. So we'll skip ahead a little bit, but this is just so good with this guy. So she's gonna do some more stuff with him.
With a multifamily portfolio of assets worth over $5 billion. So Cardone is also an author and public speaker. And as for his social media presence, he has 4.3 million followers on Instagram. And look, Jake, I actually think this isn't something that just appeals to right-wingers. I think that this appeals to a lot of, like, I don't know. I think mostly young men who want to be inspired, who believe in the hustle and think that, like, oh, if I just apply myself, I can be fabulously wealthy. He's got 2.4 million YouTube subscribers, 1.8 million followers on TikTok, and 1 million followers on Twitter. So let's talk a little more about his content. First, let's listen to his advice about home ownership, and remember that he's made a fortune in real estate.
Know what you buy home. Homes were not built for people. Homes were built for banks. The bank created that product to sell money. The bank can't lend money for just money. You need a reason to borrow money. Oh, you're starting a business. That's a reason, but it's really risky for the bank. What if a bunch of bankers sitting around drinking bourbon? We got to lend money out, man. That's how we make money. We get people to give us $1. We lend it out 9 times. We need something to lend the money on. So back in the 50s, they're like, everybody should have a home. We should call it something like the American dream. They got the politicians behind it. Those homes were built for banks because who made all the money on the homes? It was always the banks.
So, hang on, we'll go through this ad real quick.
Okay.
So, there's a couple things wrong with that. One, banks make money lending out to homes, but how did banks really start making money on lending to homes? It wasn't from lending. It wasn't from giving out mortgages, because a lot of those were under Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac through the federal government. And they were strict on how much you could charge for interest payments and things like that, and how much you could charge for the home. So it was very affordable back in the 50s and 60s, right? What ended up happening if you guys have never read The Big Short and aren't familiar with the housing crisis of 2008, I'll tell you, there was a guy in the 70s named Louis Veneri, and Louis Veneri came up with a really brilliant idea. What if we take all these home loans, because everybody pays their mortgage, right? Back then, at least. And we'll package them together as a secure bond that we can sell as a security. And you now, the investor, can get the interest payments on that, right? And so what happened was they did that, they packaged them together, and they sold billions and billions of dollars worth of these to pensions, right? And retirement plans. And it was a brilliant idea. Now the banks are raking in cash, right? But it's not from lending out to the homes so much. It's from being able to package these securities and sell them off. So now I'm the bank. I give you the home loan, right? But I get the money through Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae. I then take that. I sell that loan into a security, into a package. So now I'm not on the hook for the loan. I instantly get paid as the bank for selling it right out of and I have no risk now because I didn't hold the loan. I got rid of it, right? And then these pensions bought it, and a lot of these pensions later on went under and got screwed by these. So now the problem is what happens is now as the bank, as the bankers, I want to sell more and more and more of these loans. But there's only a finite number of people and homes in the United States. So what do I do? Well, this is what happened. They started going, well, we're going to give out higher and risk loans. We're going to start loaning people money for houses that they can't afford. And we know they can't afford. And it doesn't matter to me, the bank, because I'm not holding the loan. I take no risk for it because I'm going to take the loan. give it to you who can't afford the house, right? I take no risk. I take the loan. I sell it off on a security. So now everybody's holding all this bad paper in their retirement funds. So basically what he missed there was the problem isn't owning a home is a bad idea. Owning a home is a great idea. It's the biggest way to transfer wealth in the world is owning property. Right? Most people in the United States, that's how they got a lot of their wealth, from property. They inherited mom and dad's home. Right? That's how he got wealthy, buying real estate and selling real estate. It's a great way to do it if you know what you're doing, you have the money, the capital. What ends up happening, though, is when you don't regulate that shit.
Disaster time.
Right. But that's what he missed of that whole thing. Because it's like, once again, she pointed out, this guy that's what his thing was. I made all my money on real estate. But you shouldn't be buying homes because it's for the banks. That's not true.
Yeah, his point seems super weird. I'm kind of curious to keep going here and see
if you don't
gets to a point that makes more sense.
No, but the point is if you don't know the history and you're just a salesperson like he is, right, where I'm just selling my books and my products and crap, I just have to make it sound interesting and like I've figured out the solution here. And the easiest way to do that is to say something that's contrary to common understanding, right? Or contrary to what the economists are saying. Because now, I actually figured out the thing that nobody else knows.
I figured out the real deal,
Right. I solved the mystery, right?
The real story is more like this. Yeah.
Right. But the real story is more like, no, he's just selling you shit. Why? Because how does he make a lot of his money? By you buying his crap and going onto his YouTube channel. You investing in his business. So.
At first, I thought I was going to hate him.
What was that?
I said attending his seminar.
Yeah.
I did make all sorts of facial expressions, but no, there is a point to what he's saying there, to be honest with you, right? Because when you consider the interest that's attached to a 30-year fixed mortgage, even when we had super low interest rates, if you don't make extra principal payments on that home, you actually end up spending double the amount of what the value of that home was by the time you're finished paying off that loan in 30 years, assuming you can finish paying it off in 30 years.
Yeah, but so what? If your home value goes up, which has happened for the great majority of Americans, and we've been lucky in that regard, it doesn't always happen, but generally it has. And certainly through all these decades, you wind up winning huge on buying a home.
That is very true. He left that part out of the equation.
He leaves that part out of the equation, but he speaks with such confidence.
Right. And so Jank actually kind of makes the point there. Because at the end of it, once you buy the house, you have all the equity. And even if you don't pay off the house completely, even if you've just paid off most of the loan or some of the loan, at some point, you are positive equity unless you're underwater. Right? So the idea is, and this is for young people, if you can afford to do this, you get the little condo first, right? For $200,000 or whatever it is, whatever that you can afford, right? Then you build some equity in that. All right. Then what you do is, okay, now I want to get a bigger place, or I have kids now, or whatever it is. Well, what you're doing is you're taking the equity that you have in that house and rolling it into the new one, which means your payments are probably going to go down, even though you've got the bigger place now. Right? And the beauty of that is if you roll equity from a like property to a like property, so especially a more expensive property. So it's my primary residence and I'm buying a new primary residence. I can roll that equity into paying down the new place, lower my payment, and I don't have to pay taxes on any of the equity.
Right.
And so then you live there for 10 years or whatever it is, and then you're like, well, no, now I want to get the even bigger house because I'm making more money. So now you're rolling even more equity into the bigger place, probably lowering your payment again. And now you've got all this equity. Right? And so, like, even from her perspective, it's like, we'll just do this real quick at the calculator. Let's say I bought a $300,000 home, and let's say I got a 6% annual interest on the mortgage. Then it was a 30-year loan. Then my total payment would be $21,000 a year times 30. So I'd have paid $653,000 on that $300,000 loan, right? So she's right. I'd have paid double, right? But let's say that same house goes up in value by 10% on average per year for that same 30 years. That $300,000 house would be worth probably $5 million in 30 years. What's the other solution? I have to save $300,000 and buy it outright? No, it's easier to loan the money.
Right.
It's, yeah, okay, I paid $650,000 for the house that was $300,000, but now that I've had paid off the house, it's worth over $5 million.
Yeah, this guy's point is super weird.
Right, so it doesn't make sense. So the other guy, Cenk Uygur, who runs the Young Turks TYT that we're watching, he nails it. The equity is where the fucking value is. It's time value of money. But if you're just thinking short term, then yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I hope you win, but you're just gambling at that point. So let's watch a little bit more of this, because I think they're hitting the points pretty well here.
Makes it seem like, only a sucker would buy a home because he only told you half the story.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly 100%. Okay, so he's actually addressed his glaringly obvious conflict of interest. Remember, he's a real estate mogul. He's an influencer who's giving people advice on home buying. And so let's see what he has to say for himself on that issue.
You said that buying your home is a dumb idea. People think the reason you're saying that is because you own a bunch of rental property. You're trying to trick people into not owning anything so they can come rent with you.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Why not? I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. I'm trying to help people create financial freedom for themselves. There's not one...
Okay, tell me this isn't just me. His eyes look a little bloodshot here. Is that just me?
No, they look... Yeah, I'm with you.
He looks like a vampire in this shot. I keep waiting for Wesley Snipes to show up and, stab him.
Right?
Where the fuck is Blade when I need him?
Report in the history of the world of anyone creating financial freedom because they bought a house. Jamie Dimon, he's on CNBC talking about how great the economy is. He's not thinking about people buying a house when he says that stuff. He's thinking about his rich friends. These people don't even talk about the house they bought. Donald Trump down the street, he don't buy one house. He buys the whole building and lives in it.
That is insane. No, that argument is insane. A ton of people have built equity. It is
great.
Well,
what was that?
I agree. So you've got a real estate mogul that theoretically basically created their fortune through real estate, or primarily real estate.
Rental properties.
Talking about how people aren't getting rich because they buy their home. Unless his sort of sleight of hand here is, you don't get rich from buying your home that you live in, you get rich from buying homes that you make other people pay you to live in. Like, is that where he's going with this? Because if it's not, I'm confused.
Well, you can do this. I can say, technically, you don't get rich from buying your home. Why? Because the money's all in the equity in the house. Right?
Right. It's tied up, essentially. It's not,
right.
Liquid.
That's not the point of buying a home, though, like that. The point is that your kids are going to inherit that. And it develops intergenerational wealth.
Okay, let's talk about the other point, which this is less a wealth point and more a long-term planning point. But in terms of planning long-term for your future, if you have a house that you've paid off by the time you hit retirement, you've also just sort of secured your own retirement in a way. And then if you get to a place where you're going into assisted living or you're going into a nursing home, you could sell it and you could utilize what you gain from that. You know what I'm saying? So I guess that's wealth, but even like if you're not thinking about it from a wealth standpoint, buying a home as opposed to being in a rental forever has a way of sort of securing your own future stability.
So here's a popular thing in when I do retirement finance and real estate finance. So you have the couple, right? This is more common with boomers and Gen Xers. Millennials are going to have a hard time with this because a lot of us don't buy homes. But let's say, you had the 2 kids, you guys bought the big house, and you've got that's your client, and they're living in the freaking $700,000 home. And I've had people that, husband and wife who were teachers, not making a ton of money, but they kept rolling equity from house to house over fucking 30 years. By the time they're 60, they're living in almost $1 million house. Even though they never made more than combined, they never made more than about 120. But they were able to, gradually build that up and build that wealth. Well, now they're getting ready to retire. And it's like, well, yeah, but you don't need the 2.5 or 3-story house, whatever the fuck it is, right? And especially in your 60s and 70s, you don't want to be cleaning that and dealing with a lawn and, especially if you have hip problems or knee problems and you got to go up and down stairs all the time. No. So what do? They want to buy the really nice brand new condo that's cheaper. Okay. Well, when you do that, right, you can, let's say they can take the equity in the house, roll it into the cheaper house, right? And usually they can pay it off completely or pay off most of it. So now you're going into retirement and you use that equity to buy a whole new place. You have almost no mortgage to speak of. And there's a one-time deal where you can do that without having to pay tax on rolling that equity. Not all, I mean, it's capped at like $250,000, I think. But think about that. So now you went from, okay, I'm paying my mortgage, whatever it is, $1,800 a month or $1,500 a month. But now I've just bought the condo outright that I can manage and afford. So now I have no mortgage. I just saved myself, what, $14,000 a year in payments? Now I can afford to retire because we took a huge obligation off the board. And sometimes they have extra equity, and then you just put that in their retirement accounts and invest it so they have even more money.
Right.
So, like you were pointing out, look, this is not just, intergenerationally, this is a big deal, but also this is a big deal because you've built that up as an investment over your lifetime. And housing, even though we had the housing crash and all that, is still fairly secure compared to market investments, right? But if I'm selling my rental properties, then of course somebody, no, you don't want to buy a house. You want to rent from me at $2,500 a month, where you're getting no equity.
And definitely when you're 70, that's what you want to be doing as opposed to having your already paid for house, which you could either live in or sell and use the money for whatever other thing you live in.
Well, right. So if you're 70 and you can own the house and it's paid for, so you never have to pay a mortgage, or you could pay $2,000 a month to live at my property, my rental property, which you're on a fixed income. If I raise the rent to $2,200, that's fucking devastating to you. Because now you're 72 and now all of a sudden you can't afford your rent anymore. So what are you going to do? You're going to move? So no, there's a huge advantage to owning property. Huge advantage. Especially when you get older. You really, Trust me, kids, if you're older, you want to own the place you live in. Because then it's almost impossible to kick you out. And you do not want to be on government assistant living when you're in your fucking 70s. Yeah. I mean, if you can avoid it. So we'll do a little bit.
If you can help it.
Yeah. So we'll do a little bit more of this real quick.
Was one of the last remaining investment vehicles for ordinary people, working class people, to build wealth. And that has been snatched away from them by private equity firms, by foreign investors looking to launder their money in U.S. real estate. Like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, he's full of crap. When he says, I'm not trying to sell anyone anything.
No,
really?
Right.
But then why are you doing the shows online? Because think about it, guys. If these guys remind me of psychics, right? Oh, I can tell the future. Here's how I know you can't. Otherwise, you'd be a billionaire. Go tell the future on the stock market, and you'll have more money than you know what to do with, right? So in his case, if you're such a billionaire or whatever you are, or incredibly rich from real estate, why don't you just keep doing that? Oh, I'm here to help you. Are you? Are you? My guess is you actually didn't make that much money from real estate. You're making most of your money through this scam where you tell people what to buy. By the way, commercial real estate, look, man, guys, buyer beware of especially guys talking super confident online, okay? Mm-hmm. So commercial real estate is in a world of trouble.
He's absolutely right about that, man.
All right.
No, he's absolutely right about that. I mean, these guys come out here, oh yeah, buy commercial real estate, right? Buy this and that, buy it through these companies. He's getting a kickback, I'm sure, right? But you got to remember too, for realtors selling commercial real estate, they're getting whatever 15%. That's a huge commission, especially if you're buying $1 million plus property. So yeah, that's a lot of what he sells on his channel is invest in commercial real estate or invest in these products or invest in these things, right? And it's all the same, buy gold, buy tungsten. The other thing too is
not to mention, I'm not trying to go down a totally different rabbit hole, but pumping people to buy commercial real estate, it's still real estate, but it's kind of a horse of another color. Like, it's a bit of a different ball game.
Oh, no shit.
And it's sort of like somebody being like, well, you've invested in your 401k, right? That definitely means that you're prepared to go start investing in individual stocks because it's all like the market, right? No, it's very different. You need to do all different homework. And commercial real estate requires you to do homework in a different way. You need to understand different things than if you're buying, single family property or a duplex or, something like that people are going to live in. It's not the same ball game at all. So
no,
dangerous to be pumping that.
Yeah, I remember taking real estate finance in grad school, and the professor taught it. He used to do it for airline companies, these huge commercial real estate projects where they buy them, and he also did it for movie theaters, like big movie theater companies, right? I'm not going to say which one because they're out of business now, but I was like, movie theaters, why would they care so much about real estate? And he's like, because that's how they make all their money. He's like, they make a lot of their money through selling you popcorn and soda and stuff at ridiculously marked up prices, right? He's like, but what happened is it used to be like the movie theaters would rent the films. Now they don't do that. They get the films and they show them, and then they just give the ticket sales, the percentage of the ticket sales back to the production company, right? So they don't have to risk any real money up front. And he's like, but essentially what a movie theater is they're a hotel that rents you a seat for 2 hours. And he's like, and when you think about what a movie theater is, it's the parking lot, the structure, right? The seats, right? All that stuff. He's like, yeah, when you look at a balance sheet for a company that owns a bunch of movie theaters, that's the biggest portion of their balance sheet is their real estate value. It's the same thing with this commercial real estate. I have all the rental properties, right? Well, the value of that is how much of those can you actually fill? Right. Because if your occupancy rate is 30%, you're losing money. Right. But that's always the trick to commercial real estate is, how many people can you get in there? What are the costs going to be? So, yeah, it's like you said, it's tricky. You really, before investing in that kind of stuff, you really need to know what you're doing. And I would sit here and say, like, if somebody came to me and said, hey, what do you think about this commercial real estate purchase? I would say, let me refer you to somebody who does this professionally. Right. I mean, I could do an assessment for you, but I know I'm going to miss something that somebody who does this, for a living is not. And that's just reality. I mean, you can only be an expert in so many things. So anyway, I still love it. The guy is he's just a jerk. You're a loser if you don't make this money and blah, blah, blah. But that's the first part of the sales pitch. Is you're a loser if you're not making this kind of money. But I can help you make this kind of money.
Right. He even tried to paint the guy who was making over $1 million as a loser because, what was it? He said that his private...
my private jet eats $2 million a year. Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
It was like, oh yeah, you're a loser because you only made over $1 million last year. I'm sorry. Try convincing any, regular non-millionaire American that the guy who made over $1 million last year is some kind of loser. And this is what this guy's trying to sell us on.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as he said that, I was like, okay, you're seriously just full of hokum because everybody's like, hey, that guy's doing great,
Well, but that's kind of like Cenk made that point, which is if you're so freaking talented, right, why are you doing all this YouTube stuff and pushing all these sales shit on that? I mean, we're doing it for fun and to give advice mostly. We're not selling anything. Not yet anyway. You never know, boys and girls. By the way, Rolex, your watches suck. Convince us that we're wrong. Both of us. You need to send us some samples to convince us that we're wrong.
True.
Yes. Jaguar, your car's blow. You need to send us some samples.
It's true. It's true.
Anyway, but yeah.
And Tesla, when you find out that Jaguar sent us something, you're going to have to show them up.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to do it. I don't know what to tell you. I'll settle for Kia, too, if Kia wants to send us stuff. Anyway. No, my point is like, yeah, you're not going to see us like selling, weird financial products or something like that. We're not going to do anything like that. You're never going to see us going, yeah, you need to buy, whatever, NFTs or some shit like that. No. Why? Because it's junk. And the bottom line is look, he's talking about, oh, well, Jamie Dimon's not talking about real estate and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, because Jamie Dimon makes $31 million a year as the CEO of Chase Bank. Jamie Dimon's got most of his money tied up in the stock market. Jamie Dimon doesn't need to go out and sell shit and peddle crap like you do.
Right, like you're just pulling random names that actually don't have any relationship to what you're talking about out of the air.
Right. Donald Trump does need to sell a lot of crap because, he's cash poor. So he's always selling something or trying to raise money. He got convicted for the E.G. and Carroll thing. Freaking same day they were out trying to raise money. I mean, so just know who your scam artists are. I think that's enough for today. I mean, we got some more stuff we can do next week, but yeah, fun stuff. We're gonna have some more fun with Mr. Cardone. He's a character. He's a good guy.
Oh man, and I feel like he probably just is one of those guys who just is gonna keep saying things to give us fuel.
Oh yeah. It's really embarrassing too. He's 65. God, if I were 65 still doing that shit, I'd kill myself. I'm not going to say I didn't sell crap when I was like 30, but 65. When I was 30 selling, stocks, I was sitting there going, yeah, I'm not doing this for more than a year. I'm out. I'm going to go get a freaking, financial advising certificate, get that done.
Right.
So, anyway, well, good stuff. Good show. Where can everybody catch you, Lace?
All right. If you want to look for some of my articles, courses, or workshops, you can go to mysensewithsense.com. And if you want to write in about any of those, or you have topic requests for us, want to send us some clips, or have found somebody equally fascinating,
oh yes,
you would like us to take a look at, hey, you never know. You can email us, and Duncan, where can they do that?
We are at gossipfinancead at outlook.com. It's down below. Thanks everybody for watching, and we will catch you next time. Hopefully we'll have a more fun news day. Today's was a little bit depressing. So anyway, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you then.